The second politics of homosexuality I want to call liberationism. And now all of you liberals will hate me. It is basically an argument that, again, in a curious kind of way, because Foucault, in some ways, really you can't understand Foucault without understanding Catholicism. All he wanted to do was turn it upside down. For Foucault, there's no truth. There's no fundamental nature of human beings. Homosexuality, like heterosexuality, is entirely a social construction. It is all in our heads. That to talk about homosexuals through history, for example, is to make a fundamental fallacy. There were no homosexuals before the late 19th century when the term homosexuality was invented. People laugh, but Foucault made a great career out of this argument. And he's absolutely right in many respects that in different cultures and in different times and in different eras and places, how homosexuality has been described, what it has meant, how homosexuals have understood themselves, the words they have used, the variety of ways in which it has been expressed, has varied enormously. To such an extent to say, for example, that someone living in 8th century Byzantium thought of himself as a gay man is, in fact, I think, idiotic. No historian would disagree with that. And Foucault's brilliance, and it is brilliance, was to understand exactly that and to try and free us from these constructs that he thought were actually imprisoning us. That all that mattered in the end were feelings and desires. That heterosexuality and homosexuality dissolve into just a variety of acts. You can see also the Catholicism within Foucault, just as Catholicism is all about the sexual act and understanding that. So Foucault wants to reduce everything to that as well, and then to claim that none of it has any sustaining or permanent meaning. So, most of students in today's Ivy League will be told that if they're gay and lesbian, they're actually queer. That to be gay and lesbian is to be in permanent constructionist revolt against any sort of category whatsoever. That it is a permanent revolt against structures that inhibit human freedom. And this is what we call queer liberationism, in which we study texts and deconstruct them, in which we study words and deconstruct them, in which we look at our lives and deconstruct them. And the whole idea of gay rights is itself oppressive. And I think probably for Foucault it was. Although in his later years, before he died, there did seem to be some shift in his thinking, but I can't read into what he might have evolved into. So I want to agree with him that there is the obvious variety of expressions and understandings and self-understandings. But I don't think it goes all the way down. I think there is something also just there that we seem to understand, and all I can say is that my own experience and maybe your experience, and ask yourself this as deeply as you can. Most gay people have had to ask themselves this in a way that most straight people have never asked themselves this, because they never had to question their heterosexuality. Although Freud, of course, was fascinating about why he thought that heterosexuality had to be explained just as much as homosexuality. I do think that, in fact, no, these acts and feelings sexually and emotionally are not just acts and feelings. They are, as human beings in nature, acts and feelings that are related to other people, and those people are members overall of two genders. And if you're of one gender attracted to another gender, it is not something you've constructed. This is a very elaborate way of saying that you really can't help what turns you on. You really can't help who you fall in love with. And it remains a simple truth, a fact of life, a phenomenological fact that this is how people live and how they experience. When I wrote my book, Virtually Normal, I had to begin by saying, what is homosexuality? And I just simply had to say, this is how I experienced it. This is how everybody I've known experienced it. That it emerged from them deeply, just as heterosexuality emerged from people deeply. You don't think when you first fall in love, oh, I'm a heterosexual, or I'm a homosexual. You think, God, I'm so in love with David or Jane. That's the truth. You can't deconstruct that. And it's eternal, and it's been part of us forever. And for some reason, the biologists and geneticists are trying to figure out, and evolutionary biologists have all sorts of theories about, a very small minority of human beings have that experience with members of the same gender. There you have it. It's an experience that seems to be in every culture, at every time, in every place, and is not, therefore, socially constructed. A huge amount of the rest of it is, but when you get all the way down, there is some core, solid concrete beneath the earth that is reality. And that is what we call our sexual orientation. There is also something rather bizarre to my mind about liberationism's incoherence politically. Because queer liberationists are railing against gay oppression. But shouldn't they actually, if they were consistent, be seeking gay oppression? Isn't the experience of the outsider and the marginalized and the persecuted, which is essential to the version of the queer, threatened by equality and inclusion? If our role is to be the outsiders, why would we ever seek to belong? Why are queer liberationists part of any movement to change law or reform institutions to include gay people at all? And of course, in days gone by, before many of you seem to have been born, God, I feel so old these days. That was precisely the argument. We don't want to have marriage. We don't want equal marriage rights. We want to destroy marriage altogether. We don't want to join the military. We don't want straight people to join the military. We want to destroy the military altogether. So in the end, the irony of liberationists is that they actually seek to perpetuate the oppression of gay people. Except, of course, almost all of them in real life are too humane to actually go there. Said they take it out on gay conservatives, but we'll leave that for another day. But you see what I mean? There's something incoherent about this politically. You can't worship being in a prison as the core of your identity and then ask to have the key to get out. In the end, it becomes a prison you beautifully decorate. You make a charming home. And God knows we homosexuals are good at that.